look at me. I wasn't looking at you.
No, I know.
I wasn't looking at you at all. Like, I was looking at the questions that I was preparing. Dang it! I messed it up.
That's
First time in like
start.
10 years, I completely messed it up.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
first and only time we've ever messed up the beginning of this podcast.
Never, ever happened before. Never. Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Andry, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered, and I'm ticked off, Tom. I am ticked right off.
Did they cancel So You Think You Can Dance?
No, we don't know if that's coming back, so I'm not sure about that. No, I am ticked off because I have now experienced Dolby Vision in all of its various forms. And in all of its various forms, it is very good, which means that is the HDR we could have. And if everyone would get on board with it, that could be the only HDR format we'd have to worry about, and it would work all the time, everywhere, on every display, even on an SDR display, because that was the thing I was testing. I've got this Oppo UDP-203 that was very kindly sent to me by the folks at Oppo. Thanks to them once again. But I do not have an HDR display. My display is SDR only. But I got my first Dolby Vision Ultra HD Blu-ray, which is Spider-Man Homecoming. I put that in, and I get a message on there that says, Dolby Vision content, I'm paraphrasing here, I don't have the exact words, but like basically you can't adjust any of the Oppo player's picture output settings when the source is Dolby Vision. It's like, this is Dolby Vision content on the disc. We know how to translate that to SDR, so you don't get to touch any of the settings. Dolby has already decided how to do that for you. And it looks so much nicer than converting HDR10 content down to SDR. I mean, I'm sure I can fine-tune that better with all the manual adjustments that I can make to HDR10 content on an SDR display, but I don't have to with Dolby Vision. All the detail is just there. All the shadow detail is there. All the highlight detail is there, because it's almost as if Dolby figured out how to convert HDR to SDR really, really well. And yeah, they did. So then I took my player over to my parents' place, who have an LG OLED, a 2017 C7 OLED model, which can play back Dolby Vision. Played back Spider-Man Homecoming there in Dolby Vision, and it looks really, really spectacular, as you would expect it to. And then a nice thing you can do with the Oppo player is you can go into the HDR settings and select the forced option. And after you've selected forced, you then have to power cycle the Oppo player. But when you do that, it will now send out HDR10 even from a disc that's encoded in Dolby Vision. You have now forced it to output the HDR10 layer instead of outputting the Dolby Vision layer.
Cumbersome, but I can see where you're going with this. Yeah. Yes, go on.
So you look at that, and I mean, it looks totally fine because the LG is a spectacular looking television, and HDR10 can still look very, very nice. However, you could pick out a few little differences where a little bit of the detail was blown out at the very, very brightest because the LG OLED cannot get to a full 1000 nits. It's having to tone map that. And you can see in some of the shadows that it's not quite as pristine because it's this static metadata where it was set at once and leave it there, whereas Dolby Vision is on a scene-by-scene or frame-by-frame basis. We could just have Dolby Vision. That could have been the beginning and the end of HDR. Which would have meant, aside from the fact that it just plain looks better on both HDR and SDR displays, aside from that, you don't have to touch any settings. Wouldn't that be better for customers, especially customers who aren't super tech savvy and don't want to dig into it? You plug it in, you play it, it says Dolby Vision, and it all looks exactly how it's supposed to look. Ticked off, Tom. That's what we could have. It's not what we have, it's what we could have. Very annoyed. All right, that's my rant over. This is AVRant. I just ranted. It was appropriate. That's the end of my rant.
For those of you that may be new to the podcast, just remember Rob is Canadian. That does qualify as quite the heated rant.
Oh, yeah.
In Canada.
That's
Canada,
some salty language
telling him to calm down. That'd be, calm it down. Calm it down. All right. Speaking of things that, so the receiver is working good so far. I downloaded the Odyssey app.
Nice.
And my wife asked me, what was this $20 purchase that you made? And I said it was the Odyssey app. She said, couldn't they have just sent you a code for that? And I said,
Probably.
If I had asked.
Didn't think to ask. We still aren't in the mode, the habit of asking for things for free. It's just not what we do here. But
yeah. So anyhow, I bought it, and I have used it exactly 0 times. I still haven't finished the remodel of the home theater. It needs a couple more layers of spackle, maybe, hopefully not, but maybe, and some paint, and then I need to buy the fabric that's going to cover the stuff. So because I want to put images on everything. So I'm thinking. I told my wife. I told her I wanted her to be involved because it's my home theater, but it would be nice if she was involved. So I've got a fabric cover on one that's just black, and that one's going to stay black because I wanted to make sure I could do it or whatever. And I did mess it up a little bit, but that's okay. I can live with that. I told you I had an image of all the relative sizes of the starships in the different universes. I got that online someplace. There's also, I think NASA has posted some extremely, extremely high-res images of like planets.
That sounds likely.
If I remember correctly, those were extremely awesome. I might use those. I'm also thinking the covers of my books because we did pay for that art. Might as well use it in some way. Other than the books. I thought about the AVRant logo. Of course, that'll probably be on one. Some of the logos that they use for the videos on YouTube, think about using those. So that's all in the works. So we're still working on all of that. Some people have asked if I could pan the camera around so that you could see my room, and the answer to that question is no. I'm not going to do that. I don't want to because it's just I don't want to. My it's kind of a mess, and there's speck all over the walls, and I just. There's a certain line, and I've said this before on this podcast, but I'll say it again. Like, I don't tell people, even normal people that are my friends that I hang out with all the time, I don't talk about my musical preferences. Like, I tell you what music I've been listening to, and you may hear the music I've been listening to, but if you ask me, what's your favorite band, I won't tell you. It's just that's a line that it's like throwing a grenade in the middle of a forum. It just opens up like, how can we even trust this guy? He listens to, whatever it might be. So I don't really want to pan around and show you guys everything because it's functional and it's fine. But the reason that I do the things I do is like, why are all your wall-mountable speakers on shelves? Because I have to switch stuff up, out all the time. It's just easier if it's on the shelf. No, it doesn't look as nice. No, it's not as whatever. How come you didn't do this or do that? I'm like, because I needed to get this thing done, and this is what I had, and I don't feel like answering those questions. So, it's fine. It's fine. This is AVRant, though, the podcast that will answer your home theater and AV questions. Get your questions answered. All you have to do is ask. Ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. You also come to www.avrant.com. Leave us a comment there. Facebook.com/AVRant podcast. We're very active, and we do answer your questions. If not on Facebook, we will definitely do it on the podcast. YouTube.com/C/AVRant, where your questions will be answered in video form, where you can see our lovely faces. I got a haircut today.
You did?
She didn't do the hair afterwards. She did a little something, but it was a little goofy, and then I got rained on, and now it's terrible, and whatever, I don't care, I'm old. YouTube, okay, so, and if you want to contact us directly, you can always hit us up at, Rob is rob@avrant.com with, at First Reflect is his Twitter. I'm Tom at avrant.com, at avrant_Tom. We also have our producer, Austin, who takes care of all our videos, working on the question list as well. He has his own podcast, the We Watch Movies podcast. It's a podcast about hot wing sauce.
Okay. I can see that.
Yeah, it is not it's not like a tasting thing.
No,
they don't taste the actual sauce. It is purely from an aesthetic standpoint.
Oh, okay.
They bring the hot wing sauce in, and they coat different types of wings. In order to get a high rating on this podcast, the We Watch Movies podcast, for your hot wing sauce, is it not only has to have a good coat on a wing that's been deep fried, which is traditional, of course, but one that has been deep fried without batter, one that has been deep fried with batter, one those that have been grilled, those that have been baked. They did boiled one time. I thought that was not a good choice, but they did. So that's the We Watch Movies podcast. You can check that out. Movies. Austin.
Yep.
Yeah. If you want to
you
hit
can
up
reach
Austin
on Twitter at Austin Pond. Yeah. He spells it with a T-E-N.
Austin, T-E-N. Yeah. That's right, Austin Pond. For our listeners of the week, we want to thank them. We always like to thank the people who support this podcast. Let's see. We're going to first of all thank Bill. Bill went to www.avrant.com, clicked on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, and left us a PayPal donation. Those go into our coffers to help pay for all the things that we pay for. We also want to thank our 28 patrons from Patreon who are supporting who are currently supporting the podcast. So thank you, Bill. Thank you, Patreons.
Yeah, Bill. Patrons. Thank you very much for the donation, and to everyone supporting us on Patreon. That's patreon.com/AVRant podcast. If you would, like to
I still haven't exactly figured out how we're going to get that money to you in Austin, because I want to make sure that we're sending some. That right now we're at basically the way it works is like a monthly thing. Yeah. They delete monthly some money from you. So I've only gotten from them one check. I don't know. So my understanding from what I've read from other people is that just because it says that you're getting $85 a month doesn't mean you will actually, because some people
that's how much been pledged.
Some will go through and some will not. Yeah. So we'll see. And then I think what I'm going to do is let it build up a little bit, make sure that I'm taking out the stuff that I need to take out for the hosting fees and everything else.
Costs.
And then I'll split the remainder between you and Austin, because at this point I don't really care that much about the money until it gets like enough like that I should care, and then we will quit our jobs and do this full time. So I also want to thank Steve from NextGenHomeTheater.com. He told SVS that we are the reason he bought 2 new SB2000 subwoofers. So thank you, Steve, for talking us up to SVS.
Yeah, congrats, Steve. I already know he loves them. We were talking about it a bit on Twitter, so he's enjoying his new bass.
Very hard to not love new subwoofers. Yeah. It's possible, but it's hard. I have not installed the Dolby Atmos speakers in here yet because I have not contacted SVS. And Mark over Accessories for Less asked me if I wanted to get any speakers from him. So I was actually thinking about asking him for the Focal Birds. Since you talk about them so much.
I do.
And I would like to experience them in a way that could whatever. And if they're ceiling mountable... Can they be aimed? Do they have like an aimable?
Oh, very, yeah. Thing? They got a total pivoting mount thing. Yeah. See, and they come with both
I have to have a ceiling fan in here. I have to. It is too low, and my wife is supposed to be on the getting one that's higher so that my projector won't hit it on the way down, way over. It just needs to be up like 2 more inches, and it's so close. But we haven't had a chance to do that, and it's off center because we actually moved the wall to make this. So it was centered in the room, and then we expanded part of the room to make the room a rectangle instead of an L. So it was centered on the L part. So when we expanded the room to rectangle, it's now off center. So if I could just center it.
The Focal Birds, they come with both a round base and a 3-foot, like a tripod style base. So whatever is easiest to attach and looks best. But totally pivotable.
It would be real close to the ceiling.
Just before we get into the news, just wanted to mention we are doing our interview with a rep from Surge X. If you're listening to the audio version of this podcast on Friday or later, we have already recorded it because that's happening on Thursday, October the 27th. Yeah, that sounds right.
Sounds right.
That sounds correct.
26th. Is that right?
Was that?
26th. Thursday.
Okay,
right?
Whatever the Thursday is, that's when it's happening. And did hear back from Brent Butterworth. He would like to be on the podcast at some point.
Oh,
we'll have to.
That's great.
Yeah, we'll have to figure out the schedule. He's actually open to the idea of just coming onto the regular 2-hour show and answering questions with us, or doing an interview whichever we'd prefer. So I don't know. I texted Tom, but didn't hear back from Tom today on that front.
Oh yeah, I've been real busy. Yes. Mondays are the worst day in the world for me for everything. Like all the kids have all the things. I don't really care. We can do whatever you want, whatever he wants. I think we found in the past that having three people try to answer questions can get a little cumbersome.
I know.
So I don't mind one way or the other. And if you want to do the interview, I mean, not do the podcast with him, you guys could do it and just leave me out of it. I mean, I'd take the week off.
If anyone deserves a week off, I think it's me. I've been going solid. I haven't missed a week for a couple of years now. I know. Pretty much, so.
I'm not saying that. If you would like to take the week off, you take the week off too. But and just have him do the podcast by himself. There we go.
Yeah, well, that's a win-win.
We take all the vacation. Have him and Lee do it. No, yeah, whatever. Why don't we just do like a normal thing and we'll do a couple of questions.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So some folks have sent in questions that they would like Brent to answer specifically.
Right.
So,
sure.
So we'll do that. Okay. So we'll try and set up an interview. We'll get those questions answered. And if you would like to send in a question, might be too late to do it already by the time you hear this. But by all means, send in questions anyway, because even if we don't get them to Brent, we'll answer them for you. So send them in question@avrant.com. There you go.
So in the news, LG's 2017 OLED TVs are getting a firmware update that lets them decode lossless Atmos. That's a Dolby True HD signal with Atmos extensions, like the Atmos soundtracks found on Blu-ray and Ultra HD Blu-ray discs. Mm-hmm. All of the 2017 LG OLEDs offered Atmos decoding for their built-in apps and Atmos playback modes, using either their built-in speakers or include soundbars. But if you connected a Blu-ray or Ultra Blu-ray player, they couldn't accept the lossless Atmos signal, and now they can.
Yeah.
Seems a weird thing to omit, but
Well, I mean, TVs accepting lossless bit streams of any form, I don't think I've seen that before.
Yeah.
Right? You've never been able to send like a True HD or a DTS HD Master Audio bit stream straight into a television. That hasn't been a thing you could do, so this is interesting. Now, there are several DTS-X soundtracks on Blu-ray and Ultra HD Blu-ray. No support for those. So if it's a DTS-X soundtrack or a DTS HD Master Audio for that matter, that's still going to be just the 5.1 DTS core that comes out of that. So that's all you're getting there. But Atmos is used more widely than DTS-X, so the majority of object-based soundtracks, you'll get to support those. 2017's only, though. This does not apply to the 2016 models.
Yeah. I've been enjoying the Atmos stuff. I tried to watch Spider-Man Homecoming last night. I rented it from Redbox. Was not in Atmos. The Homecoming that was on there was not in Atmos.
Well, the Ultra HD Blu-ray is, so.
So I got most of the way through it before I fell asleep. I was so exhausted. If you're watching the YouTube channel, you'll see that I'm wearing a blue shirt that you've never seen me wear before. It's brand new. It's from the Science Festival. Every year, St. Pete has a Science Festival. My wife volunteers. My wife's best friend is the co-chair. My wife has been like the volunteer chair before and stuff like that. So this weekend was a Science Festival, so we were completely annihilated from that. It was just, everybody's been going 24/7 for the last week. So there's been that. Let's get into comments here. Lee Overstreet was looking back through some of his old notes and emails and discovered that his first appearance as our AVRant co-host Pinch Hitter was with Liz back near the end of 2012. So his 5-year anniversary is coming up. The traditional gift for 5-year anniversaries would solely happily accept a pair of SVS subwoofers if anybody wants to help him celebrate. Only if you promise to turn off the subs that are in your speakers. That is the only way I will allow anybody to
set them to small. It just has to set his towers to small. That's all.
He's not going to do it. The man can't be taught. He's an old dog. No new tricks for him. Nathan, speaking of SVS, Gary Kubian was guest on the Beginner Audiophile podcast. For regular AV listeners, the first 40 minutes or so cover a lot of the same information that's been shared on AVRant, but towards the end, Gary mentioned some of SVS' upcoming plans for new products, including trickling down some of the tech that's gone into the 16 Ultra Series subs to lower price points, using the DTS Play-Fi system for some sort of wireless home audio solution, and some self-powered Prime wireless speakers that they hope to show in prototype form at CES 2018. So in January, that's coming up here. So I
Those
like
are all,
the trickle down.
Yeah, reasonable things that one might expect.
Prime wireless speakers, though.
Yeah. So take like the Prime satellites or the Prime bookshelves, build in some amps, and make them Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. That makes sense.
Okay, not like battery powered though.
No, not battery powered. In fact, they touched upon the battery powered idea because the hosts were like, "I want genuinely wireless speakers that I can stick somewhere and not have any wires coming out of them."
Stupidest thing. Like, what would you do? They die and you won't even know it.
Yeah.
It'll take you forever to figure it out. Or you'd have to put some light on it, and then we're gonna how I got this light on the front of my speaker. It's distracting me because it's in the. I know. You do not want what you
having to make sure you charged all your speakers before you go to play, and it's a struggle. It's tough to figure out how that's going to ever work.
I'll tell you how they can make that work. This is honest truth. Those speakers ship with a fast charge battery.
Sure.
And the way that it works is you charge the battery. The battery can charge, just keep the battery on some cradle or something, someplace or plugged into a wall. The battery can charge the speakers in like a fast charge in 30 seconds or something like that. Something ridiculous. You know what I mean? You just hold it up there like that because you're not taking the speaker off the wall. It's not a thing that's option. That's not what you're doing. So you got to be able to just plug it in there and it just, boom, it does it. But I just don't see that ever happening. Let's get to the questions here. Jonathan, over on AVS Forum. Sorry. No good ever came from a statement that started with over on AVS Forum. Mark Henninger posted an article titled How to, Converting Passive Speakers to Active Speakers. The title is confusing since the project is actually about modding a pair of high-efficiency PA speakers with an external crossover as opposed to installing amplifiers into a pair of passive speakers. So what you're basically telling me here is there's an article that says how to convert passive speakers to active speakers that doesn't actually tell you how to convert.
Not if you're thinking of active speakers as being speakers that have amplifiers built in, because that is 100% not the case. He is using external amplifiers that are wired to the speakers. So no, it's not that. However,
so fake news, basically. Converting passive crossover speakers to active crossover speakers would be a much better description, says Jonathan.
Yeah, that's what's actually going on.
He took a pair of monoprice stage right PA speakers at $140 a pop and disconnected their internal crossovers. These are passive PA speakers that use a 15-inch woofer and a horn-loaded compression tweeter in a simple two-way design. On their own, they use a 3.3 kilohertz crossover point. He used a Denon AVR X4300H AV receiver, yay, and set the front left-right speakers to small with an 80 hertz crossover. The front left-right pre-outs of the Denon fed a mini DSP DDR-C88A 8-in 8-out DRAC Live processor. The Denon X4300H subwoofer output was also fed into this DRAC Live box. He used the DRAC Live box to create a 24 dB octave crossover centered at 1 kilohertz rather than the 3.3 kilohertz point used in the speaker's original design. The two high-passed outputs of the let me try this again. The two high-pass outputs and the two low-pass outputs fed a AVRant SR7010 AV receiver that was essentially used as a dumb amp set to pure direct mode and using its 7.1 analog inputs. The remaining four outputs on the DRAC box fed four subwoofers using the 80 Hz subwoofer signal that originally came from the Denon. This is pretty stupid.
Convoluted, okay, but this is what's going on.
I'm not saying it won't work, but why are you doing this? He wired up four of the Marantz speakers binding posts, one to each driver of the monoprice speakers, and then he ran DRAC Live. So now every single driver, two tweeters and two 15-inch woofers, four subwoofers, got its own separate DRAC EQ settings. Mark claims the results were transformative and a huge improvement over the stock sound of the monoprice PA speakers. But he also notes that they rolled off steeply above 16 kilohertz and is able to reach their output limits now since the tweeters were being asked to play so much lower. He also concludes by saying he will probably upgrade all of the drivers in the monoprice speakers.
That was the conclusion. He's like, well, I'd like to get up to 20 kilohertz and I'd like to get back to the high output levels that they had originally, so I'll just upgrade all the drivers in the cheap speakers. So replace the crossover with an active crossover. And
he wants to understand the point of all this. That's a good question. I am on board with that question. Oh my God. All right. First of all, why would you need to use the subwoofer output on the Denon when you could just do the crossover internally in the Mini DSP? Can't you just do that internally? Is there a reason why you can't do that crossover right there?
Yeah, just make it a 3-way crossover.
Yeah.
Not that I can really come up with. I don't see why you couldn't just make the Dirac box into a 3-way crossover.
You just set everything to large in the Denon and have the Dirac do everything. I mean the Mini DSP.
I'm just describing what he said the process was. So.
All right. First off, he says, this is Jonathan again, if you just took this $280 pair of DJPA speakers and connected them to the X4300, Jonathan gets that they play loud, but with their stock 3.3 kilohertz passive crossover, their dispersion wouldn't be really suited for indoor small room use. Therefore, if you modify the crossover, you could sacrifice output headroom in order to get more uniform dispersion between the large woofer and the horn-loaded tweeter. That seems to have been the point of all this, correct?
Yeah. Nearest I could tell.
That's what they're going for here.
Mark did say this is something that he was able to do because he already had all of these products on hand. He already had these two AV receivers, one of which is basically just being used as a 4-channel amp. That's really all the Marantz is being used as. He already had the Dirac Live box, the 8-in, 8-out Mini DSP Dirac Live box, and he already had these speakers on hand. So he was basically like, can I improve the sound of these speakers by converting or basically bypassing their built-in passive crossovers with a fully active crossover system that also EQs each of the drivers independently? Can I improve the sound? And the answer, I believe him, is yes. Yeah. However, there was a sacrifice, which is that they didn't willy-nilly decide on 3.3 kilohertz as the crossover point. I'm sure they looked at the impedance charts and the graphs of frequency response and power response and all that, and they're like, this is the most efficient place to cross over this particular 15-inch driver to this particular compression horn-loaded tweeter. However, that does result in a lot of that sort of mid-range in the 2 kilohertz range being very directional, because that's essentially coming from a large 15-inch diameter driver. When you're outdoors or in a huge, dance club, that makes sense. When you're in a small room, doesn't make so much sense. So you sacrifice the efficiency and output capability of the tweeter in order to lower the crossover. Okay, but at the end, he's like, well, I'd still rather have the huge output capabilities back, so I'll just replace all the drivers.
Yeah. This is, for me, this is more of an interesting thought process.
Sure.
Thought project than it is a thing to do. You can think about these things, but the reality is driver choice and functionality of the actual speaker were married with how much how much they had to with that output, what the cost was going to be. So they knew where the speaker was supposed to go and what it was supposed to do, and they knew how much money they had what their price point they wanted to hit. And then they look at the components, and they're just like, they're not, like you said, they're looking at a lot more than just, I would like this to play a little bit lower, or a little bit higher, or a little bit whatever. They are looking at impedance curves. They're looking at, driver breakup. They're looking at a bunch of things that go into choosing that 3.3 kilohertz. And you could very well have, by doing this, and it'd be interesting to see. I don't know, because I had no time to prepare this podcast, so it'd be interesting to see if there were any actual measurements done.
Yeah, he had a frequency
impedance
response
measurements and stuff like that.
Graph, not an impedance graph, no.
Well, the frequency response would be interesting too, because to see how much it dipped or did whatever. Oh my God, those are some.
No, that came out very, very nice and flat. So
because of the Dirac doing the EQ.
Because there's Dirac in there, yeah, exactly,
yeah. I'd be curious as to how well it, just taking the driver as is, and taking the speaker as is, and
applying
putting
Dirac
it through
to
Dirac. what's the difference really going to be? What's the difference really going to be there between what you did, all the work you did, and what it can do, what Drac can do just by itself, or Odyssey for that matter? Really, it'd be interesting. But Jonathan says, no, we've added a $1,000 external crossover plus 4 channels of external amplification. Granted, that external crossover also independently EQs each driver, but if you simply spent $1,300 on a pair of high output speakers with better dispersion and a crossover design that's already better suited for for an indoor small room use, would that really be a step down simply because the whole speaker would get EQ'd rather than each driver separately? And in the cost of the external amplification and still wanting to upgrade all the drivers, how does this project make sense? It doesn't make any sense, and you're absolutely right. You spent $1,300 on a pair of speakers, and you're not going to run into any of the problems that he's running into. He's, like I said, it's can it be done? Yes. Let me show you, and this is how I did it. Should it be done? Absolutely not.
Well, I mean, look, you've got like Phase Tech, right? They have their Darts system.
Yeah.
Which uses Odyssey Pro, which is comparable to Dirac, and does this very thing. There is a separate amplifier and a separate crossover setting and a separate EQ for each individual driver in the Phase Darts system. It's not EQing the speaker as a whole, it's every driver separately. Using Odyssey processing. So, I mean, they hit upon that similar idea, but now you need an amplifier for every single driver, not speaker, not channel, driver. And that starts to get really expensive for questionably beneficial results. It's right. Like, yeah, if you just design a good speaker with a passive crossover, an active crossover, whatever you want it to be, but it's already linear and has even wide dispersion, then EQing that speaker as a whole should work every bit as well, because it already covered the things that were being corrected here. What he was correcting here was the dispersion pattern, the uneven dispersion between low, mid, and high. That was the result of these design choices. He's correcting the dispersion pattern and then using EQ to make sure he still gets linear frequency response. So
this is, like I said, it's nice because he had all this stuff around, but the reality is last week we talked about a guy who found some Yamaha speakers that sounded like garbage, and he built a new passive crossover.
That's right.
For them, basically. It was passive, right? They do passive or do you active?
No, it was a passive cross. It was car audio parts. So it was
right, car audio parts. That's right. That's what I thought. And he probably did it for $1, $2, you know what I mean? That's the difference in price cost here. So if the solution here, if the idea here was to say, how, using this active crossover, how much can I tweak it, how much can I do, how different can I make it sound, blah blah blah, but that's not what was done. What was done was, can I make it sound pretty good? Well, you could have done that with a couple dollars of car audio parts to do the crossover and then plug it in through Drac or Odyssey for that matter, and you're done. So it's and the title is hilariously wrong.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not even close to being right. They're not active speakers.
I mean, you just had to insert the word crossover in there. That's all you had to do.
Someplace.
Yeah.
It's crazy. All right, next question from Jonathan. Ars Technica posted an article that describes the Tick Box streaming device, I've never heard of this, and how the company that sells it is facing the first lawsuit in which Netflix, Amazon, and all 6 Hollywood studios in the MPAA have banded together to sue them for copyright infringement. Well, that's something you could put on your resume.
I wonder if one of those sides has more money.
I've seen that. I've never heard of this Tick Box, though it is nice that they named it after a blood-sucking, virus-ridden, carrying insect. That's bold. It's a bold choice. I'm gonna say you really just said, you know what, we're just going all in on this one. We're calling it the Tick Box, and we're just gonna steal all the stuff. I have no idea what this is yet, but I gotta believe. I mean, if it was just one studio or just Netflix or something like that, I'd be like, okay, what are these guys doing? But it really seems like that's not what's going on here. The Tickbox website claims that the device is legal because they don't host any content themselves and they don't download anything. All right, so I still don't know what this box does. So if users decide to stream pirated content from third-party sources, it's on them. However, they also predict that if you buy a Tickbox, you'll probably decide you don't need to pay for any subscription streaming services anymore. And they even posted video tutorials on how to use the, quote, in theaters, quote, section of their interface to start watching a movie that isn't available for in-home viewing of any kind at the time the video was made.
In other words,
how could this possibly turn back? How could this possibly bite us in the ass? Anybody around this corporate table here, which is actually my mom's dinner table, does anybody think that maybe we shouldn't make a video on how to pirate content? No one? We're all good with this. All right, pass me the Mountain Dew and give me the D20. It's time to go. The Tickbox runs Android 6.0 and uses Kodi, but unlike actual legal Kodi boxes, it's preloaded with access to a bunch of third-party pirate sources. Their only contact method connects you to a call center in Costa Rica. That's still even a place, and even though they're supposedly based in Georgia. So clearly there's nothing shady going on here. Previously, similar lawsuits against other streaming sites and hardware providers have been filed with the MPAA, the cable companies and streaming services, etc. But now they're banding together. Do we think this will increase their effectiveness in combating piracy? No, I do not. But this box will never. This box is gonna.
Well, this one's going away. But it was funny because they looked into the address. So that's the state of Georgia in the United States, by the way, not the country.
Sure, not the country. Yeah.
But they looked into the address where supposedly that exists, and there was a previous company that also made it easy to get pirated content that was like owned by someone with the same last name. That like disappeared, and then Tickbox suddenly showed up. So it's like whatever gets squashed, they'll just declare bankruptcy and then pop up again. What do you know? Yeah. I mean, for every one of these that they stamp out, another 12 take their place, don't they?
That's true. You know what? And I think I'll be honest with you, the only solution for piracy in my mind is education. That's what it comes down to. You cannot sue this sort of stealing of content away. And there's some people that are going to do it no matter what. There's no amount of anything that's going to stop them from doing it. They're going to. College students are going to pirate stuff. Sure. They have no money.
Well, also, the only reason they were able to file this lawsuit is because they said their headquarters was in the state of Georgia in the United States. A lot of these companies, they're like, we're based in some country that doesn't care about copyright infringement, so good luck suing them. Which, they still attempt to, but that's the way that a lot of companies get around that. So, yeah.
But, I mean, for me at least, as a content creator, I am very much against stealing of content, though I know it happens all the time. I know there's people that listen to this podcast that do it. I don't approve of it. I'm not going to, I've been at people's houses and I've seen stacks of movies that they've borrowed from friends or gotten from Redbox, and a little drive next to them. I'm watching them just burn them to this drive, and like, oh yeah, we'll watch them later. I rent a bunch now, and I'll watch them all later. I'm like, dude. The reality is, I don't know that as much as they want to stamp out piracy, the people that are willing to sit there and watch a handheld cam, telephone recording of a movie, they're just you're never going.
That was unlikely to ever be a customer paying you $35 for an Ultra HD Blu-ray disc anyway, because they clearly don't care about the quality.
I mean, when I was when we were traveling, my wife and I, before we got married, we were in India, Nepal, and stuff. And one of the major draws of the local bars they would post what movies they were going to be showing that night, and they'd be movies that were filmed just like this, but they're shown on CRT. That stood up on a stool, at one end of the restaurant, and everybody sits there and watches the movie and stuff, and it's terrible, but
it is.
There was nothing else to do there, so we went. So, I mean, I didn't pay them any extra for it, but they did make money from me. But I didn't go there for the movie. I went there for the food, but I stayed for the movie. You're just not gonna stomp this out with suing people. It's just not gonna happen. They should still pursue it because it is so important for legal precedence and stuff like that. But yeah, it's just the rest of us that suffer when they come up with HDMI and we have to suffer through that.
But I guess with all of them banding together, that sort of spreads the cost around, and maybe they can. That's part of the thing.
How much cost can there really be? I mean, they file.
Hey,
they
man,
have a
lawyers charge by the hour.
That's true, and I'm sure the lawyers are bilking them for however much they can. But really, it's just file a lawsuit. The company disappears, and that's the end of it. Daniel. This comes from Facebook. Daniel says he has a hot tub outside his place and he'd like to install some speakers that can survive outside year-round. He's in Wisconsin, so it gets cold in the winter. Whatever he installs out there, he'd like to be able to connect it to a multi-room setup that he could control with she who shall not be named from Amazon or as part of a Sonos system. So, would he also need a special amplifier? What all should he get to make this happen? Let me see if I got this right. He wants speakers outside near his hot tub.
Yes, correct.
But he also wants them to be able to be part of a multi-room setup? Those are the same speakers?
Yeah, like he wants a whole house audio so he could play the same music inside and outside by the hot tub at the same time.
Okay.
That type of thing.
Right, and it's part of a Sonos system. Now, I am not familiar with Sonos. I know I'm familiar. I know what they are.
Yeah. He wants some kind of whole house audio.
What you need is a distribution amp. You need an amp that can take multiple inputs and then distribute them to one or more rooms. And many of those amps, and I know Parts Express, never remember the model number, but I know Parts Express has one that we've talked about a number of times here before.
Yep.
That you can take 3 or 4 inputs, I don't remember how many they are, and then shuffle them off to different rooms or have them all play in all the rooms, however you choose. So, Rob, tell him which one he should buy.
Yeah, over at Parts Express there, you'll want to look for a Dayton distribution amp. If you just search for that at Parts Express, they have their 12-channel version. Now, they have the simple ones. They've got one that just sends 40 watts per channel to 12 different amp channels. You select whether you want 1 or 2 sources that feed all of those amps or one individual source for each of the pairs of amps. So you got 6 total different zones that you can do with that. They have a 60 watt per channel version of that, or they have the one that Tom talked about, which is matrixed. So you can have 6 sources, 6 separate rooms, and you can mix and match whatever source in whatever room, or one source in all the rooms, or one source in 3 of the rooms and a second source in 3 other rooms. So Dayton distribution amp is what you want to look for there. Now, I wasn't quite sure, because let's say he goes for a Sonos system. Let's say that's what he decides he wants for whole house audio, and he winds up putting wireless Sonos speakers in all of his indoor positions. And therefore, in that case, he wouldn't need a distribution amp, right? He's already got the speakers that are the wireless Sonos speakers. In that case, all he would need is an amp to drive the outdoor speakers that are by his hot tub. Well, if that's what you're doing, then you could I'd just stick with the Dayton. I know we've kind of not been as hyped about their Class D version, their APA 102 that replaced their APA 100, but it's $100, it's 60 watts. Class D for your outdoor speakers is going to be absolutely fine. And so for $100 you could do that. And then if it is Sonos, you would get their Sonos Connect, which is simply a thing that connects to the Sonos network and then sends out stereo left-right audio line-level outputs that you would connect to this Dayton amplifier, and that would then power your outdoor speakers. So either way, I'm saying go to Parts Express to get your amplifier. If you're going to do one where the speakers are already a pre-built system for your indoor, then all you need is a 2-channel amp, and you'll connect it to a Sonos Connect. Or if you're doing it via Echo Dots, that'll also work. You just connect their stereo output to the amplifier of whatever speakers. Or if you're doing it with Chromecast audios, that's another way you could do this. Use the Google Assistant as your voice control. But in all of these cases, a similar idea. I will mention, whatever amplifier you have, you're going to want to have that inside and connected to your whole house audio system, and then run traditional speaker wire out to your outdoor speakers, but you want to make sure you get properly rated, which will be, they'll call it direct burial. That can be buried underground. It's also waterproof. It's weather resistant. It's what's meant for outdoors. So again, Parts Express has you covered there. You get their direct burial speaker wire, and most of these outdoor speakers, it would be good to get the 14-4. So that's 4 leads of 14 gauge wire, because then you send that 4 leads wherever you have your speakers, and if it's a single speaker that does both stereo channels, you're all set for that. If you just twist it together, that gives you a larger gauge. Whatever you need, it's most convenient to get yourself 14-4 direct burial speaker wire.
Yeah, if you twist them together, it makes them 11 gauge. Which is nice. As far as outdoor speakers, there's a number that we recommend on this podcast regularly. Remember, outdoor speakers usually have they'll tell you what they're rated for and everything else. But most of them are rated to go in. I know that you live in Wisconsin, and I know that it gets real cold there. But I imagine they don't just sell these speakers in the continental United States. They probably also sell them in Alaska. So I think it gets a little colder there. And everywhere in between is Canada. So in Canada, it gets colder than Wisconsin as well. So I think you're going to be okay with just about any outdoor speaker that you can find. We often recommend the Yamaha outdoor speakers. I'm a fan of those. I've used them in the past, haven't had any problems. I'm trying to remember the one
with most of those Yamahas, those are meant to be sort of like mounted on the side of your house, or they do suggest having some, like, not covered, but like a little bit of cover, like just the eaves that hang over your house, just that amount,
which you'll probably have anyways.
Yeah. So that's an option. I like their sort of wedge-shaped ones. So if you want some louder output and more bass, you can get their AW992s, which have an 8-inch woofer. Or I like their AW592s with their 6.5-inch woofer. To me, those are a good balance of output, bass, price, all of that. So the AW592s would be a good choice from Yamaha. But there's another option, because maybe these are just going around the hot tub and you want something that you can just sort of sit on the ground rather than having it mounted to some sort of side surface, which is more or less how the Yamahas are intended. So for those, I'm saying like rock speakers. And RBH makes some nice ones. RBH has some.
Oh, do they?
They sure do.
Okay, I didn't know that.
They're just called the
they
R8.
have other outdoor speakers too. So
yeah. Now they go for they're just under $300 a pop, those RBH ones. However, one speaker can play both stereo channels, so you don't necessarily even need more than one of them. You can, and those are like, they're definitely meant to be outdoors all the time. Everything in them is sealed. Everything is plastic, weather resistant. There's nothing to degrade in them at all. So those could be a very good choice. The RBH R8 rock speakers.
They also have the AO520s and the AO620s. I've never heard those. The only thing I'm just glancing at them, it says outdoor, indoor. They don't look as weather resistant to me as the Yamahas that we're recommending. So if you do end up on the RBH website, just take a look at the picture of the back of them, and you'll see that there's no covering over where you connect the binding posts, which gives me a little bit of pause. It's sort of like that speaker company that made outdoor speakers with a port in it.
Yeah.
Also gave me a little pause when I was like, wait.
That's a deal breaker in my opinion, but at least the RBHs are a sealed enclosure.
Yes, it is a sealed enclosure. So if these are just going to be like on a porch,
it's more like a patio speaker.
Yeah, this is a patio speaker. That's a good way to describe it. It's not going to get rained on, but you don't want it to like completely rust out on you, basically. And I think those would be fine for that. Brandon uses an HTPC, it's a home theater PC, running Kodi. I haven't said HTPC so long. We have not said those. We used to talk about them all the time. Anyways, for media storage, he has a Western Digital MyCloud device connected to his home network. He has expanded his storage capacity to 15 terabytes?
Sure.
By adding USB hard drives to his MyCloud device via a USB hub.
That's not
until
that
now.
much.
His stuff has worked. That 15 terabytes is a lot. I mean, that's a lot of movies. I mean, how many movies do you get in a terabyte these days?
Well, what you're looking at, maybe 40 gigabytes per movie. So Not that many,
So
maybe like 25, 30 in a terabyte.
Yeah. Okay.
If you're doing a full 1-to-1 backup of a Blu-ray, that is.
Yeah. So until now, his setup has worked fine as he's only used the HDPC to play content from his network storage, and therefore he hasn't needed any transcoding capability. But now he's running out of storage space, and he also likes the idea of being able to access his content remotely. He isn't quite sure how to proceed. Doesn't Kodi do all this? Not Kodi. What am I thinking of that does all this? What is the one that you use?
Plex. Plex certainly does that.
Right.
And there are plugins for Kodi to allow you to do remote access that way as well.
So anyways, he says, he could build a home server PC. He doesn't have any experience building a PC from scratch, though, but he's willing to learn. However, he wants the whole setup to be low maintenance. Good luck. B, he could get him, there's no such thing as low maintenance HDPCs. He could get a more powerful NAS, or network accessible storage, right? Is that what that
network attached storage, yeah.
I always get that wrong. He's seen the units from Synology that can run a Kodi or Plex server on their own and perform transcoding. In either case, what would be the minimum specs he should look for? And since price is definitely a concern, what's the most cost-effective way to store all of his content and be able to access it via his network at home and be able to access it remotely with high playback quality in all situations? So basically, now he has the drives. All the stuff's on the drives. Yep. What he needs is something that can take the stuff that's on the drives and send it to wherever he wants it to be sent. Correct?
Yeah.
I feel like there's already a box that does this, and he just has to buy it.
So yeah, I mean, there's a number of ways to come at this. So number one, you could just leave your existing home theater PC on all the time. Make sure it's connected to the internet. Make sure it's running your Kodi server software or Plex server software if you decide to transition over to Plex. And if that home theater PC is on all the time and connected to the internet, that has the power to do whatever transcoding you need to send it out over the internet to your mobile device or your tablet or whatever when you're just connected to the internet wherever you are in the world. And you bring up the Kodi or the Plex app on your mobile device, and it connects to your home theater PC at home, which at that point is acting as a server, and it does all the transcoding in that. Now, obviously, that is wasting more electricity than a low-powered box by having your home theater PC on all the time, and it's not what I would call low maintenance, because having your home theater PC or any home server PC is... You're constantly updating it. You're constantly managing it. At least in my experience, that's been the case. I would not call that low maintenance at all. So he also wants to expand his storage. Right now, he's done kind of this makeshift model. He's got these MyCloud devices, which are network attached storage devices, but they're pretty low power, and that keeps the cost down as well. They're not powerful enough to run a Plex server all on their own. And then he's connected extra USB hard drives to its USB ports to expand its storage. He's like he'd like a more elegant, all his drives are in one place, and if he's going to go to the trouble of expanding his storage capacity and getting a box that can do that, maybe he just gets a box that is itself powerful enough to be the server, and then it's on all the time, not drawing as much power, it's powerful enough. And yeah, Synology absolutely has solutions to do that. I would look for essentially any of their quad-core models. Any of their quad-core models, if you want to do that, have enough power to handle the type of transcoding you're talking about. Now, some people want to transcode to 25 devices simultaneously, all right?
What?
If you want to do that, some people are nuts like that, If that's what you're trying to do, then you need something much more powerful. But he's like, this is for me. This is like, it's going to be one device remotely that needs to be transcoded at a time. So any of the quad-core NAS servers that Synology sells would 100% be up to that task. But they're a bit spendy, especially if you want to get ones that have more than 4 bays. So if you were to get the model that I like, it would be in their DSJ series. So right now, the current model would be the DS418J. That's the current one. So that's a lower cost one. It's under $300. You can put 4 hard drives in there, up to 8 terabytes per drive if you want to buy new hard drives. So you could just expand your storage that way. It does also have USB ports, so you can keep using your USB hard drives to expand the storage. So you could just migrate over, maybe add 1 or 2 more hard drives to it to expand your storage, and then continue using the USB hard drives that you have. That would be a cost-effective way to do it. And honestly, even though that isn't one of the quad-core designs, if all you're transcoding to is one other device, it should be able to do that. I can't promise you that fast forwarding and rewinding is going to be terribly smooth, because that tends to be the thing that trips up the lower powered devices like this. But if you're just playing something and it's transcoding to one device, it should be perfectly fine. So that's a very reasonable solution. Now, for everyone else who doesn't already have a pile of drives on hand, who doesn't already have their own home theater PC that they're already running, what I would recommend for anyone who wants to set up a Kodi or a Plex server and do it the easiest way I know how, get an NVIDIA Shield TV. Those are $200. I would highly recommend that you add a little micro SD card to it, because if it's Kodi or Plex, they keep all of the local metadata, so all of your posters and, you know, all of that extra stuff. All of that has to be stored on the device itself, and the 16 gigs that are built in there that also holds the Android OS and that, it's not really sufficient for how much metadata you might have in a large collection. So you throw in a little micro SD card to expand the NVIDIA Shield's internal capacity, and then...
Right.
The choice of where you're storing all of your actual like Blu-ray backups and that is up to you. You could do it through a USB hub, because you can certainly connect USB storage to it, or you could use network storage. And when you're doing the Kodi server or the Plex server on the NVIDIA Shield, all you have to do is point it to the network location. Where have you stored the content? That's where my media library is. It'll import all of that data, download all of the metadata, organize it really nicely, and the Shield does a heck of a nice job of transcoding. It can do up to 6 devices simultaneously really nicely. It can do up to 12 devices simultaneously, a little bit clunky, but I mean that's way more than what you need for a really quite affordable device. So if you go the NVIDIA Shield route, that becomes your server. It's also a heck of a nice player, because it can output lossless audio and all that.
Right.
Do all that. So that could essentially replace your home theater PC, other than the ripping side of things. Of course, it can't rip anything itself. It doesn't have an optical drive. But as far as being the server that's on all the time, not eating a lot of power, also being a really nice playback device, also able to transcode, the only question is, where do you store all your content at that point?
Right.
So he still wants to expand. The question is, do you want to put it on your network? Do you want just a big kind of, octopus USB hub of USB drives? I don't really know. I mean, so yeah, his next question basically answers what I decided to do. Yeah.
Yeah. So he asks, what did you do? So how did you do yours?
So I ended up with a Windows PC. It's an older Core i5. It's actually one of the low wattage i5s, so it's not super duper powerful, but it's certainly powerful enough for my uses, which is basically only ever transcoding to one device at a time. So that is my server. I use Plex. It's my Plex server. It just sits there. It's on all the time. It's doing the same job that the NVIDIA Shield TV would do. So I'm recommending for anyone else starting from scratch, just get an NVIDIA Shield TV. It's cheaper and smaller and uses even less power, but I already had this Windows PC with a Core i5 low power version, so that's acting as my server. And for all of my storage, I got 4-bay J-series NAS devices from Synology. So at the time, I had a 411J, and then a 412J, and then a 413J. So I have 48 terabytes of storage going on, because I put 4 terabyte drives times 4 into 3 Synology NAS units. I went, in chunks at a time. But that's where I am. So those all sit on my network. My Core i5 PC just draws the content from them and acts as my server. That's a solution. It's it's nice in the sense that I don't have a bunch of separate USB drives, each of them needing to plug into power individually and all that. I just have these 3 Synology boxes that can sit there stacked on top of each other, and they're just accessible from my network. Anything that can attach to my network can access all of those drives. I set them up very simply. I basically just use JBOD, the just a bunch of discs. I'm not rating it. I'm not, redundancy or anything. I just wanted the storage space. So given that you can get those DS, J series units, if you go with some of the older models, you can get them for around $200. So that's a nice way to have 4 hard drives in one space, all connected to your network. They're just not super powerful, so that's why I'd have the NVIDIA Shield acting as the server and transcoder.
All right.
That's my suggestion.
For everybody else that want to talk about home theater speakers, let's go on. That home theater HGPC stuff, dude, just gets way out of hand, and
that's why I like that NVIDIA Shield so much, because it's like you get the Plex server software, you decide where you want to store your content, and off you go.
Yeah. Ronnie lives in Alaska. We should ask him about outdoor speakers. And he's planning to move into a larger house in the coming year. He says his wife has been extremely patient, understanding with him when it comes to his home theater purchases. And he has put together an Atmos setup in their current house using a Denon AVR X4300H. Yay. 2 SVS PC2000 subs, plus one of the new PB16 Ultras. SVS Ultra Series speakers all around with prime elevation speakers for the overhead positions. He loves the sound, even though he does not currently have a dedicated theater room. But he has 2 things in mind, the larger house and wanting to expand to a full 11-speaker configuration. So, he knows he's going to need an external amplifier since the X4300H can only power 9 speakers on its own. So what amp should he get? He's thinking it would make the most sense to get a 5-channel amp and let the X4300H power the surround back and overhead speakers. But there's a very large price difference between the amps that claim around 120 watts per channel versus the ones that claim 200 watts per channel or more. His wife is questioning why he needs to spend over $1,500 on an amp. But if it's a one-time purchase that will last a long time and actually be worth it, she's okay with it. SVS customer service suggested that it makes the most sense to at least power the front channels with whatever external amp he buys, and that the Ultra Towers can definitely handle the 200, 300 watts. So he's worried about reaching their limits. The more watts, the better. Being that he's in Alaska, shipping is a concern. Outlaw Audio charges a lot to ship to Alaska, so they're basically out of the running. He can get Emotivo, minor price monolith via Amazon, though, and Amazon shipping to Alaska is a lot more affordable and possibly even free. If he ever needs a repair, though, he has to consider what it might cost to ship the amp, so keeping the weight down is a consideration for him. He's leaning towards the Emotiva XPA5 Gen 3. It's got plenty of headroom, a 5-year warranty, and it's 32 pounds lighter than the mono price. It's more expensive, though, at $1,600. Would a much less expensive, lower wattage model be a wiser choice? Should he get the mono price monolith rather than the Emotiva? Okay.
Yeah.
He did not tell us the size of his room. That's a big, long question.
Well, because he doesn't know his future larger house is going to be at this point.
Yes. Okay. So first things first, get a house. Okay.
Right.
But once you get your house, we can answer this question more betterly. I mean, we'll be able to actually answer it. Right now, you could be moving to a great room, in which case, you're like 10 bajillion cubic feet, and it's got a window that we never close. So, yeah.
Well, he's got that PB16 Ultra, so.
Yeah, that is true. The bears it's the bear detergent. I do not necessarily agree with the 5-channel amp idea here.
Oh, really?
I don't. I think it's fine. And the question, what he said is, what does he say here? No, where does he say it? Oh, above. It's probably above. His wife is, no. Where's the thing? He says there's a large claim. His wife is questioning why he needs to spend over $1,500 for an amp, but if it's one-time purchase that will last a long time and actually be worth it, she's okay with it. If it's a one-time purchase, yes, it will be that. Will it last a long time? Yes. Yeah. Will it actually be worth it? I don't know. I think you can get away with getting. You should be. And I went down the same rabbit hole when I started thinking about putting Atmos in here.
Right.
Like full on Atmos. I was like, I'll get 2 channels, and they will power my overhead speakers. I'll be done. That's all I need. I'll be done. But what if I took those 2 channels and put them on my fronts, right? And then the receiver can power everything else. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. But if I do that, I'm going to need a nicer amp, because the cheap amp that I would have gotten for the overhead speakers, I can now no longer have. Because it could be front speakers. You got to have a good amp. If I'm going to do 2, I might as well do 3. And if I'm going to do 3, I might as well do 5. You see how we go here?
Yeah.
When you get the house, that will determine what size amp you get. To me.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's mostly about the distance between you and the speakers. That's actually the thing that counts the most.
That right there, I mean, if you end up in it with a dedicated, dude, why are we even talking about this right now? You should be talking about, I need a dedicated home theater. When I get my new bigger house, my primary purpose is to walk in there and say, where's the home theater going to be? If there's no place for it, we're looking at a different house. It doesn't have to be a big room. And that's the magic of all this. If it's a small room, oh, you're golden, dude. You could just buy whatever sort of tiny amp you want to power the overhead stuff, and you're done. It's going to be, but if you end up in a house that doesn't have a dedicated home theater and you're sitting 22 feet away from your speakers, well, then we're in a completely different situation here. You need the house. Or at
least an idea of how far away you're going to be sitting from the speakers, because it could be, let's say, the assumption is you're going to have a larger house and a larger room, but even so, you know that you want a 120-inch screen, and you know how far away you want to sit from that 120-inch screen, which essentially tells you how far away from your front speakers you're going to be, right? If you have all of those things, because if we know the distance between you and your front speakers, that basically tells us how much power you're going to need.
Yes.
Right.
But I think this is all putting the cart before the horse. I actually would highly recommend you find a house that is bigger than the way that you want it to be bigger and has a room that you do not need. And it is a rectangle. And it is got, it is sealed and it's got doors everywhere. And it doesn't have to be huge. If it's like 20 by 15 or something like that, or 13 or 17 or something, you know what I mean? That would be great. It'd be perfect. You could have a nice little home theater in there. You could put 2 rows of seats. It would be real nice, right?
I mean, the way I'm looking at this is because I understand where he's coming from, which is, I mean, essentially he wants to buy an amp, and if he wants 11 speakers right now, like right now where he's living right now, he has to buy an amp of some kind. So he's like, well, if I'm going to buy an amp of some kind, I might as well get my forever amp that will work for me in whatever situation I go to. Now, I mean, the way I've worked it out is based on the efficiency of the Ultra Towers that you have, the SVS Ultra Towers.
Right.
You can sit as far as 4 meters away from them. All right, which is, that's a good distance. What is that, around a little over 14 feet? 14, 15 feet?
A meter is what, a little over 3 feet, right?
A little over 3 feet, yeah. So that's
12, 13,
I forget the conversion, but it's somewhere in the 14 to 15 foot range. If you're anywhere in there and you got a 200 watt per channel amp, that'll let you hit reference volume with the SVS Ultra Towers based on their 88 dB efficiency, and you sitting 14 or 15 feet away max, 200 watts would get you to full reference volume, and that would do it. So I understand the rationale for being like, I'm going to get an amp anyway. If I get a 200 watt per channel amp, I know it'll work for whatever situation I might be facing in the future.
See, I don't agree.
No, I understand that. So, I mean, yeah,
I see what you're saying, and I'm not, your logic is unassailable. I'm just like, if you're in this situation and you're like, I just want to get my 2 extra speakers above my head that I cannot have currently because of my thing, you get an amplifier, the cheapest, smallest little amplifier that you can get, the Parts Express one that we talk about that's probably not that great, you can get, digital one.
I don't know if you can get that from Amazon, so they have the audio source. The 100, which is $130 now, but that would be a fine choice.
And this is not an amp you're going to go, okay, well, now I moved to this bigger room, I can't use it anymore. Guess what? You're not going to be sitting that much further away from your top middle speakers anyways. This is not going to be a humongous difference. You're not going to be in a 17-foot room.
Right.
You're not. You might be in a 10-foot room. It might be 2 extra feet away from you than you are in a normal size room. You can still use that amplifier to do some of these jobs, and if not, you Believe me, you could
and
always
you could
find
add
use for an
more if you
amplifier.
really need it. Like you add a higher, like a 200 watt per channel, 3-channel amplifier
Right.
at that point when it becomes necessary to do it. Yeah, I can.
So if you're looking to add the speakers right now, I would get the smallest amp I can, because you don't know you're going to need the $1,600 amp. And this $130 amp that you maybe can buy right now, guess what, dude? That will be usable in the future as well.
So there is the middle ground, because Emotiva in their base X series does have their 5-channel A5 175. And as you might guess, that is 175 watts. Now, it's 175 watts into 2 channels simultaneous. It's 125 watts into all 5 channels simultaneous. But the number of times that all 5 channels are drawing maximum power simultaneously is really, really rare. So it's essentially a 175 watt per channel amp, which is close enough to 200 watts that I really wouldn't sweat it. All right. And that's $800. So it's half the price of the XPA5. It's a 5-channel amp. It's basically 175 watts per channel in real world use. It's 125 watts per channel in crazy town use.
Yeah.
For half the price, that, I mean, to me, that starts being a pretty high value right there.
Oh, it's a high value. I still think he doesn't buy it until he knows he needs it. I can't go, because I went down this rabbit hole. I went down this whole trail of thought where I'm like, I'm going to do this and I can do this. And pretty soon I was looking at the monolith amps going,
yes,
man, these are nice. And I'm like,
$2,000.
What am I thinking?
He was asking like the difference between the monolith mono price, which is actually less expensive than the Emotiva, but it's heavier. He's a little bit worried about that. And he's like, would it give me anything over the Emotiva? Well, it actually does have a lower noise floor. The monolith does have a slightly lower noise floor than any of the Emotiva amps. So it's lower price for slightly better noise floor, similar power rating, and then heavier, though. Honestly, I can't in good conscience tell you that you need a $1,500 amp. I agree with Tom on that. Yeah. I could see as far as going to the $800 5175 from Emotiva. I can see that being a really high value that'll last you and handle any situation that is realistically in your future. I can see my way to doing that. I can get on board with Tom's plan though as well, which is you get a 2-channel amp right now, an inexpensive one, and if you need a 3-channel amp in the future, that's when you buy it.
He asks, with a beefy amp driving his front tower, should he still send them too small? Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Go on. Yeah, what changes to this? I mean, there's no. Who cares what amp's powering it? It's the small.
You never want to play any of your speakers full range, because wherever they are in the room is not the best location for deep bass. That's have 3 SVS subwoofers, dude. Let them handle the bass. Let your speakers handle the mid range and up.
That's right. What changes to the settings in his receiver will he have to make when he adds the external amplifier? You may have to tell your receiver that there is an external amplifier there. You will definitely have to tell your receiver that there are speakers there.
Yeah,
that
not
will
the
have
Denon
to happen.
X4300H.
Yeah, so the X4300, you don't need to tell it that it's got it just powers those amps anyways. So
yeah, all you really need to do in that one is go into the amplifier assign and say you now have an 11.2 system. Yeah. Once that's done, you need to run Odyssey again.
That's right.
All right. And the only other thing that might be different in here is, so there's the setting that says, okay, now I have 11.1. That's my configuration, my amplifier assign.
Right.
2 out of those 11 speakers must be powered externally. And by default, it'll set them to be the surround backs, I believe. I think that's the default. If that's what you want to do, then bingo bango, you're done. If you want it to be your front, left, right speakers instead, or one of your pairs of overhead speakers instead, or whatever, the ones that must be powered externally, you can change that setting. But that's pretty self-explanatory, really. It's just saying 2 out of these 11 must be external. Which ones are they? And that's it. Yeah. But you got to run Odyssey again.
So is there anything else he should be considering when it comes to his choice of amplifier that he hasn't thought to ask? No, not really. I mean, just you want to make sure you have enough power. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to plug this into a surge protector?
No.
Not really. They say to plug it straight into the wall.
Every amplifier manufacturer on the planet will tell you plug it into the wall. Do not use surge protection. So, but don't buy
That's about
it. Tom still says hold off on the purchase, and your wife can thank me later. Antonio has a 3,500 cubic foot room. This is from a Twitter question we got. It's got doors that can be closed off from the rest of the house. He's been using a single SVSP B10 NSD sub. But he found and bought an old PC Ultra model for the cheap. Can he pair that with his PB10 NSD, or is it too much of a mismatch? You can absolutely pair it.
You can pair it.
I mean, the stuff that the Ultra's going to play lower than the PB10 NSD that it can't reach. First of all, it's an inaudible. And second of all, who cares? You had one sub before. So now you mostly have two subs, except for these very lowest frequencies that you can't hear anyways. You feel them, but you can't hear them. You now only have one sub for that. So you went from having only one sub for all of the bass frequencies to only having one sub for a couple of the very, very bottom. So yes, you can pair this and it will be just fine. There's not even too much of a mismatch. There's literally, I don't want to say literally, there is very little within the SVS line that you could pair together, and I would say it would be too much of a mismatch. If you take an SB1000 and pair it with the new 16 Ultra monsters in a small room, I'm still going to say that's fine. You bought way too big of a sub the second time, but it's fine to pair them together. You put that SB1000 in a big room, the mismatch isn't between the two subs. The mismatch is between the sub and the room. So
yeah, so you are, of course, here still limited in terms of the maximum output capability of the PB10 NSD. Obviously, if you just turn both of these subwoofers up to maximum and played them, the PC Ultra model is going to play louder. That's just a fact. So having the two subs, I guess if you put them side by side, you could actually increase the output capability quite a bit, but that isn't the normal reason we're recommending having dual subs. We want them on opposite sides of the room from one another to give you more even bass. However, we do always recommend that you level match your subs. So there's every possibility that one of these subs is going to be physically closer to you. Make sure that's the smaller PB10 NSD. Right.
Yeah.
Put the smaller sub physically closer to you. It doesn't have to play as loud to be equally loud at your seat. Put the louder, the Ultra sub, in the position that's physically farther away from you. And when you level match them, you're still, the maximum you can get to is what your PB10 NSD can do. That's still the sort of limiting factor there. Right. But in terms of how they will sound playing together, up to the maximum output of the PB10 NSD, they'll sound just fine.
Just fine. Patrick was the fellow who was hoping to find a pair of desktop speakers for $100 that only he would be able to hear while sitting at his office desk. We said there really isn't anything like that available, at least not at that size and price point. And that a better solution for private listening while still being able to hear his coworkers when they need to talk to him would be open back headphones. He started doing some research, and it appears that almost all open back headphones are corded, and he wants wireless, and he wants Bluetooth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is tough.
Wireless, Bluetooth, open back headphones. I feel like this is one of those things where you're like,
pick two?
You could have a cord, you could have no cord, or you can have open back. Pick two. You know what I mean?
Yep.
You can't have to put them.
Yep.
Anyways, he started doing some research, and it appears as though almost all open back headphones are corded. Oh, I already said that. Why can't he have cords? I don't understand.
I don't know. But he wants one.
Do you understand Bluetooth? Let me tell you something about Bluetooth. I know it says 33 feet. They lie. They lie as much as lying can possibly be. If you step out of your little cubicle, they're gone. You're not gonna hear it anymore. almost guarantee you. Anyways, he looked into the Sony 1000 XM2 and KEF Space One wireless headphones because they both have adaptive noise canceling that can be adjusted via the app or turned off altogether. But will that allow him to hear when his coworkers need to talk to him? Can he really believe the marketing hype? That's not what noise canceling means.
That's not what any of that is. Nope.
That's not what that means. No, noise canceling, okay, think of it this way. When you're on a plane, this is what noise canceling is. When you're on a plane, there's that drone in the background.
Yeah, the engine sound.
That engine sound in the background that's going on constantly, that's what noise canceling does.
Yeah, it actually...
Noise canceling takes and inverts the wave.
That's right.
So it's now playing extra sound into your ears, but that sound is canceling out the sound of the engine. I was very disappointed when I put on my first set of active noise canceling headphones and I could still hear my children speak to me. It was a very disconcerting thing because I was like, I thought I was going to be able to tune you out. It's not how it works. It takes those uniform sounds and creates an inverse wave to cancel it out. So it's actually putting more sound into your ear. It's just that you don't hear it.
Yeah, where he was being led astray by the marketing is that it was saying because you can tune the noise canceling or turn it off altogether, when you need to hear the outside world, you still can. I'm like, nah, that's really not what's going on here.
No,
that kind of has nothing to do with it. Both of these are still sealed. They're way more than $100. Yeah, this isn't really what you're looking for in either of those.
Right.
Yeah.
So both are clearly well above his $100 budget, but he's now willing to save up if it means getting what he wants. What do we think he should get? I think you should get a wire, a really long wire. Is what I think you should get.
I mean, you're sitting at a desk at an office. It's tough for me to say that not having
if you're
the cord
gonna, how much are
vital.
these headphones, by the way? How much were they?
Oh, so the Sony 1000 XM2s are $350, and the KEF Space Ones are like $650 because they were designed by Porsche.
Of course they were.
Yeah,
get the Oppos or the PM1s or whatever. Those are super $1,000. Those are like $1,200. But those are really nice, and they're open back, and they're planar magnetic, and they sound amazing.
No, I mean, if you are okay with the cord, I'm suggesting the Sennheiser HD 559s, which you can get for just under $100 on Amazon right now. So the open back, really nice sound, but they do have the cord. So I was like, okay, let's say he's got to have wireless for some reason. Well, Sennheiser does have a pair of open back wireless headphones. Those are their RS120s. They're actually like $99. So it fits that. But they don't do Bluetooth. Now I was like, whatever source you have, can you just plug it into the wireless base station of these? It gets you the wireless headphones. It gets you the open back design. It gets you the price point you wanted.
It gets you a little nice little stand thingy that you can put it on.
Nice little stand that charges them. Yeah. I mean, it's a pretty slick little design. So open back, charging stand. The only thing that it doesn't get you that you wanted was Bluetooth. But whatever source you have, you just plug it into that little base station. That would do that.
If it's your computer, you take the headphone output and plug it into this thing.
If it's your phone, you take the headphone output, you plug it into this thing.
Now, these are going to be like 100% plastic, and they're not going to, I mean, they're $100, and with everything you're getting.
And worst of all, the RF transmission is like within the same band as FM transmissions, so you might get some interference. Yeah, very well might get some interference. So if you were willing to spend these much, much higher price points, Sennheiser does have a really cool pair of headphones. They are the PXC 550s. Now, they're sealed initially, but they do Bluetooth. They're wireless, and they have a feature where the ear cups are actually touch panels. So you can do like your volume changes and stuff just by swiping on the outer ear cup. But if you double tap it, it activates the built-in microphone to let you hear the outside world. Because these can also be used as a chat headset, with your phone. Oh. There's like a microphone built in. The problem is when you double tap it, it automatically pauses your music. So the question is, if what you need is to be able to hear someone in your office talking to you when they need to talk to you, it's as simple as you double tap your headphones, the microphone opens up, and you can hear them. But if the problem is they need to be able to get your attention,
you need open back still.
Then you still need open backs, because these will work if the getting your attention isn't the problem. Just hearing someone is the problem. You double tap it, music pauses, opens the mic, you get to hear them. But if the problem is people need to be able to get your attention, then that's not going to work. These are still closed back, your music's playing, you're deaf to the world.
I cannot think of a single open back headphone that is wireless.
And Bluetooth, yeah. Well, because they're trying to let you close out the world and also not bother everyone around you because they're open back. So, I mean, those are like $400, so they're up in the same price ranges as the Sony as the Kess, but at least they have that double tap to hear the outside world feature.
I will tell you the PM1s come with a really long cable. Like really long.
Well, actually, so do the HD 559s. It's like a 10-foot cable.
Yeah.
So I'm like, either deal with having the cord, deal with the potential radio frequency interference of the inexpensive RS-120s and not having Bluetooth, or if you want it all and people can get your attention in some way and you can double tap, then you can pay $400 for the PXC 550s from Sennheiser. All of them are Sennheisers in my case.
The reason we're having such a hard time helping you, sir, is not because we're not trying. It's because you are asking for something that very, very few people have ever asked for.
Which is, only you
anybody
can hear
who
them,
wants something, right? Anybody who wants wireless is going to be someplace where they don't want the sound to leak out.
Yeah.
90% of the time. I mean, more than 90% of the time. So it's very unusual to ask for what you're asking for. Therefore, they don't make them. Yeah. And I mean, the simplest solution to this whole thing is really just to get some speakers and keep them real low. But maybe he listens to gangster rap at the office. He doesn't want people
Milton
to know.
at Office Space. They said I could play it at a reasonable volume.
That's right.
Between the hours of, what was it, 10 and 12?
Haven't seen that movie in forever.
I forget the exact times he was allowed.
So last week I complained. I said I just want to be able to watch The Cube, right? I just want to be able to watch The Cube. Showed up on Netflix the next time I turned on Netflix. It's nice. There. I watched it, went, was as good as I remember. All right, so I was very disappointed. Rob G. It's not Rob H, Rob G. Rob has a 7.2.4 setup at SVS Ultra Towers and Center, SVS Prime satellites, everywhere else. Dual PC 13 Ultra subs run by a Denon AVR X4300H receiver. Yay! He's certain that all of his speaker wires are connected properly, as sure as Tom. Oh, good. And yet, whenever he runs Odyssey, it tells him that his front towers are out of phase. To make things even more complicated, if he wires everything correctly and leaves the phase setting of his subwoofers alone, and just lets an Odyssey make all the settings, the bass sounds good with all of his speakers except for his front towers. If he flips the subs to 180 degrees, the bass with the front tower sounds good, but then the bass from all the other channels sounds weak. He tried an experiment. He purposely wired his front towers out of phase and left his subwoofers set to 0 degrees. That resulted in the front soundstage sounding pretty good and the bass from all of the other channels sounding okay but not great. He tried measuring his frequency response using RoomEQ Wizard. He got the best results when everything was wired correctly and the subs were set to 0 degrees, except that the combo of the front towers plus the subs didn't measure well. He wants great bass, and he wants all of the speakers to sound good. He doesn't want to have to choose between the front sounding good while everything else sounds like he's sitting in a bass null, or everything else sounding good while the fronts sound weak, or the odd middle ground that he achieved when he purposely wired his front towers out of phase, and everything sounded just kind of okay. So what's the solution here? Are his speakers set to large?
I know.
I feel like his speakers are set to large.
That was absolutely my thought. Or if not set to large / full range, set to a very low crossover point.
I'm betting that crossover is like 40 hertz or something like that.
Exactly.
Because it did the same thing to my speakers. It set them to 40 hertz, and I was like, nope, thank you. Going up to, I set everything up to 80 except for my Eventiva surround speakers, which it set at 110, and I left it at 110.
Right.
Everything else I set to 80. The Veris Grand bookshelf speakers were set to like 60 hertz or 40 hertz. Sure, it was ridiculous. Yeah. They play really low. Set everything to 80. I feel like you have your tower set to large,
or maybe like 40 hertz or something like that.
Yeah. So I would change your crossover and run and do this thing again. and
now
see how
I know I understand the appeal. You're like, I got these SVS Ultra Towers. They have these side firing 8-inch drivers. They can play really low. Don't I want to set them to a low crossover point? No, because this is what happens. The bass coming from the towers starts bouncing around your room. The bass also coming from your subwoofers starts bouncing around the room, and when those sound waves meet up, they start canceling each other out. They start creating nulls that you don't want, unevenness from seat to seat. You don't want your front towers playing the same deep bass as your subs. They're not in the correct positions within your room. I really suspect that's, especially if he really did just run Odyssey and left it, because that auto setup definitely set you to either full range for the towers or a really low crossover.
Yeah, I agree.
Point. You must and you know what? Even if you did set them to 80 and these are the problems you're getting, raise the crossover. Try it at 90, try it at 100, try it at 110. That's actually the issue, is your towers playing bass that I know they can play. That's cool. I know the appeal of wanting them to play it, but it's not working. This is the problem. This is what happens.
Yeah.
No, now I don't know why it's telling you they're out of phase though. That's a question mark.
That is really weird. It was really weird for me too. I'm still questioning whether or not I have this thing set up right. It's thrown my whole world out of whack. For those of you that don't remember last week, I set up a new Denon X4300H and it said one of my speakers was wired out of phase, and I checked it and it was not. But then I switched it anyways and it sounded better. Yeah. But I'm still my wife is like, you are God, just sit down. So anything that's in stereo, I go and I put my head like directly between the two speakers.
Yep.
To see if the image is coming out of the direct, because it's the sound seems like it's coming directly from the screen, which is exactly what it should sound like. Yeah, and it does. Okay. But I've got the speaker wires switched, and it's driving me absolutely bonkers. It sounds right. I don't believe it. I just can't. It's too much.
I mean, maybe the internal binding posts are switched inside your speakers that you can't even see.
I absolutely believe that that's the case. I do believe that that's the case, but I can't believe it's the case. I can't. Because I think it's the wires. I think there's something wrong with the wires. I think the wires are weird. So am I going to switch the wires? No, I'm not going to switch the wires. If I switch the wires, and what if it's not the wires? Then what do I do? I'd rather just not know and just suffer through this stress of me knowing that the wires are wrong and knowing that there's literally no one else in my life at all who would even notice if it was wrong. Just no one. I hate my life. All right. It's so wrong. Adam just upgraded to a Denon AVR X3300W after hearing from us that it's down to $450 at Accessories for Less. He previously had a Denon S900W, but he's wanted to try Odyssey Multi-Q XT32 for a long time, so he jumped at the current deal. When he ran Odyssey on the X3300W, it set his subwoofer output to negative 11 dB. He wanted to... Sorry.
Yep.
He wanted to goose that level a bit, so he tried both methods that we discussed last week. He only wanted the small boost, so he went to the speaker setup menu and went to the manual sub menu. And the test was played and increased the trim level a decibel or two. That seemed to work just fine. Then he put it back down to negative 11 dB, where Odyssey had set it, and he tried using the audio menu and subwoofer line level sub menu. As soon as he turned it on and had it at the default 0 dB setting, his subwoofer got way louder, much too loud. So it seems as though the subwoofer level adjustment setting in the audio section overrides whatever the trim levels are set to in his speaker settings menu. He isn't sure what we decided is the best way to goose his bass level a little bit. He decided on using the speaker settings menu and the trim level settings where the test tone is playing. Does that seem correct? Yes. Seems correct.
That is the way I suggested doing it anyway, because that's universal. It's across all your inputs, and it sounded correct. That's the main thing, and you got your extra 1 or 2 dB goosing that you wanted.
Yes. By the way, if you ever find yourself in a situation where your subwoofer is being set to negative 11 dB on your trim levels, it is because the volume knob on your subwoofer is too high to begin with. So you should lower that.
I'm almost surprised that happened, because XT32 gets you to adjust the volume level of the sub before it runs.
It gave me all sorts of issues. It gave me all sorts of issues when I was doing it, because I was like, you can skip it though. You can skip that.
That's true. Maybe he
skipped it. So he didn't change his. Is this the same guy? Yeah, he didn't change his speakers. Still the same 5.1 speaker setup he's been using. He plans to add top middles for Atmos, but he noticed that the X3300W seems to have a higher noise floor than his older S900W. To be fair, he only noticed a slight hiss coming from his speakers when he set the master volume higher than 0 dB. Above reference volume, but he never heard any noise floor at all with his S900W. So why would the newer receiver produce a slight hiss above 0 dB while the older S900W didn't? And should he be concerned that the noise floor will get even louder when he adds the top middles? Yeah, you could be concerned about that. If you're getting a noise floor,
likely in fact, yeah.
Yeah, if you're getting a noise floor because you're running these speakers, adding more speakers just puts more strain on your amplifier, and it will increase the noise floor. Why are you getting a different noise floor from your older receiver, even though this one's more expensive, or at least has more stuff in it? Because they had to pay for all that stuff that they put in there, and they still trying to give it to you at a reasonable price, and very likely something within the amplifier section suffered because of it.
Yeah, the S900W, that's going back a couple of years, because I think, what are they on, the S930 at this point?
No clue.
I think the S920 was the contemporary of the X3300. I might be off by 10 in those numbers or something like that, but I think that was the way. So, it tends to be the case that some years they are able to put a little bit more money into the power supplies and the amplifier sections, and then other years, in order to hit the same price points and add more features, they do cut back a little bit on the amplifier section. However, I question a little bit how much attention you were paying and how many times you turned the volume knob above 0 dB on your S900W, because maybe it was there, but you just never noticed it because you never turned the volume knob that high, or you just
could be. It doesn't really matter. It's neither here nor there, because the real question is he going to have more noise floor? And the answer is you will.
Yeah,
very likely.
Yeah.
So what can you do about that? External amplification. I mean, you only spent $450 on this thing to begin with, so you should have some money to burn on that. And it really, you don't like we said for the other guy, you don't need to go get a 5-channel $1,500 amplifier. You can buy a $100, $120 one to power the overhead speakers, or maybe get a 4-channel one and do your surround backs. Or he's only got 5.1, right? So
well, he's going to 5.1.2. That's the plan.
So I mean, you could use the 2-channel amp. Well, you should definitely use the 2-channel amp for overhead ones, but if you get a 4-channel or two cheap 2-channel amps, you could do your surrounds in this thing, the overheads ones, and then that should hopefully lower your noise floor a little bit. But I would test that before I bought 2-channel amplifiers. I would buy one with the plan of using them for the Atmos, and then hook them up to your surrounds and see if the noise floor goes down. I would do that. Okay, this is the last one because I'm going to bed. Robert in Perth, Australia. Hey, Robert. Should have hung out when I was there, dude. I do miss Perth. I do quite a bit. First up, a while back, Robert asked about connecting both his 4K HDR LG OLED and his 1080p projector to a 4K source. We suggested a Sewell split deck might work, as long as he always had the projector turned off whenever he wanted to use the OLED TV. That specific model was impossible to find in Australia, so we found a different HDMI splitter that said it was 4K, HDCP 2.2, 18 gigabits, and all that stuff. Fortunately, it did not work. The LG OLED TV would only show a black screen with occasional flicker of an image, so he's back to only connecting one display at a time. He's finding the OLED looks good, and he isn't missing his projector. It looks so good that he's not even missing his projector that much. So for audio, he's running an optical toslink cable from his LG OLED TV to his Marantz SR6010 receiver. That's getting him 5.1 audio from any of the built-in streaming apps, but he's wondering if he could be getting even higher quality audio by using HDMI ARC, or audio return channel functionality. He's got a C6 OLED from 2016. Will that model send Atmos via audio via ARC, or audio return channel. Well, we just heard at the beginning of this podcast that they just sent out a firmware update for the 2017 models, but 2017. You got 2016, Haas. So not yet, and maybe not ever. I think
this has been a complaint of 2016 model year owners because the audio return channel will not send out Dolby Digital Plus. It is sending out what we expect HDMI audio return channel to send out, which are the exact same signals as what your Toslink connection can do. 5.1 Dolby Digital, 5.1 DTS, or technically 6.1 DTS ES, and 2-channel uncompressed PCM. That's what Toslink can handle. That's what HDMI audio return channel can also handle. The 2017 OLEDs and some of the Vizio models as well are kind of an exception, a newer exception, where they've managed to get Dolby Digital Plus bit streams to work with the audio return channel.
Right.
But the 2016s, they can't do it. Some people are saying they're hoping maybe somehow with a firmware update they could, but so far LG has been mum's the word about that subject. They're like, sorry, can't do it. So really,
I would not hold my breath on that one, to be honest with you.
Yeah, what you're getting right now from your Toslink connection is the same as what you would get from the HDMI ARC connection. So in your case, with the 2016 OLED, there's no advantage to be had with audio return channel other than just not having one extra cable.
Right. So he uses a Harmony remote, so he really doesn't want to have to turn on HDMI CEC and have it mess up his sequences and commands when he wants to use Harmony activity. Is it possible to deactivate all of the CEC's command stuff while still using HDMI ARC in his case? Well, you don't need to use it, so the question is moot, but I can't think... I mean, you have to have CEC on for ARC to work. You have to. Right?
In the TV.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So it's interesting because with some of the higher end Denon and Marantz models, your SR6010 being among them, they actually do give you separate menu settings for HDMI control and HDMI audio return channel.
Oh, that's nice.
So in the SR6010, you can actually turn on HDMI audio return channel without turning on all of the control commands. HDMI CEC must be turned on in your OLED for HDMI ARC to work, but you can separate ARC from the control part in your particular Marantz receiver.
Nice.
So you could actually do this. However, like we just explained, though, you're not actually going to get any benefit in terms of the audio quality.
Except for the reduction of one cable.
Except for the reduction of one cable. But it's the same formats that you're already getting with OLED. Yeah. Okay, so you wanted to stop there. So we had what, Bobby?
We can do
Matt?
Bobby. We can do Bobby.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, the last question from David is just our reactions to the latest Star Wars trailer, so we can give thoughts.
What did Tom and Rob think of the latest Star Wars trailer? I saw it. I don't remember.
Oh, really?
Wait, yeah, we see Snoke or whatever, Snake.
Snoke.
What is his name? Snoke. We see him. We see the very end with the girl saying, Rey saying, "Can you teach me?" or some crap, and it looks like she's saying it to emo Darth Vader.
Emo Red.
Yeah, I just. I mean, I'm excited. I'm not excited for the movie. I am hoping this movie is going to be finally. Though you could make the argument that Rogue One was a real departure from the series, but I'm looking for this main story movie to be something more Empire Strikes Back, meaning I'm looking for some character development, I'm looking for some drama, I'm looking for all of that. So
well, it's the second act of a trilogy, so of course whatever the biggest conflict is going to be, that's storytelling 101. Your biggest conflict comes in the middle. Yeah,
I expect Mark Hamill to die in this one. He might not. I expect him to die.
We know that Leia is going to.
They're going to kill off Leia for sure if they haven't. Yeah. If they didn't in the script, they did now.
Super duper tried to make you believe that's going to happen in the trailer because there's the whole Kylo Ren is flying his ship and looks like he's about to blow up whatever ship Leia is on. And
right, so my definitely looks like he's yeah.
My overall feeling is that trailer is super misleading. Because there's no way
that's the way I feel about it too. I feel like they sliced it together so that it looks very much like
because I don't think Rey is actually talking to Kylo Ren.
I don't think she is. I don't get that impression from that trailer. That was the one thing. Yeah, that was the one thing. I was like, I think she's talking to somebody. I think she's talking to Luke, obviously, but
sure.
They made it look like she was talking to him, and I'm like, I don't really see how that makes any sense.
I mean, he just put his hand out, so I mean, that could have been like telling one of his stormtroopers to hand him something or whatever. I mean, I think it's super misleading. I mean, we know Princess Leia does need to die in some way in this movie, but it's probably not what it looks like in the trailer. Luke being scared of Rey, that's probably legit. But
right. And the one time he's seen it before, I gotta believe that's Kylo.
Sure. That makes sense.
I think
that's probably but of course, the only thing that really matters from the marketing side of things is, what did you think of the Porg?
Oh, is that little rat thing?
Little thing that was next to Chewbacca that let out some weird little scream. The penguin-y type thingy.
Hairy penguin. I guess penguins are already hairy. I don't care. Whatever. Put all your stupid animals in there. Just
my favorite thing about Porgs are all the internet videos where people are attempting to get their cats to freak out by throwing Porg toys at them, and the little animatronic Porgs and stuff, and the cats do not care. They're like, cats do not react to Porgs, and I'm like, that's because they saw that thing was created by about 15 people in a consensus group setting, and they're like,
oh yeah, it's like big eyes, big ears, expressive faces, cute sounds, very tiny. It checks off all the boxes of the little boys and girls are going to want to sleep with these.
They're tribbles.
Aren't
they tribbles?
No, tribbles don't have faces. Tribbles were just puffballs.
But it's the same idea.
Yeah, it's stupid. Whatever. I don't really care about that.
Those are our reactions to the latest trailer, David.
Yeah. Interested to see the movie. More interested to see the Black Panther trailer. Looked awesome. Looks so good. Really interested to see what that, I think it's going to end up being another formulaic movie. Marvel's like, hey, don't fix it. Like I said, I didn't finish Homecoming much, except the thing that, and maybe because I fell asleep at the end, did they go to a dance at any point in this? A homecoming dance? There was. Okay, I slept through that part. Okay, good to know, because if not, I felt like it was just sort of a play on this whole Spider-Man's coming back home.
They definitely didn't spend very much time at the homecoming dance, but there was a homecoming dance. Right. It existed.
I'm so tired. All right, we're going to deal with Bobby and Matt next week.
Okay.
I will say that for all you cat people, there is not zero chance I might own a cat pretty soon.
Ooh.
I have a cat that's living outside my house, and he, I'm not sure, is very adorable and wants to come in very badly, and has been hanging out outside the house quite a bit. And yesterday I almost let it in. So we'll see if that happens. We'll see if cat is capable of destroying my speakers, in which case I will soon be sans cat. All right, let's thank our listeners of the week. We're going to thank Bill for his donation. He went to www.avrant.com and clicked on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link. We also want to thank our 28 patrons from Patreon for donating their money. All those monies will go into our coffers to pay hosting fees and stuff, and some of that money will be coming towards Austin and Rob very soon, so I know that they will thank you.
Yeah, Bill, thank you so much for the donation, and thanks again to all our patrons. It's going to screw up saying that every week.
I think so. It's going to take about...
Thank you. We appreciate the donations.
We also want to thank Steve for talking us up to SVS, so thank you, Steve.
Yeah, Steve, thanks so much. Folks, head on over to Next Gen Home Theater if you want to see an updated list of all the Ultra HD Blu-ray titles, which Blu-ray discs have Atmos, which ones have BTSX. He maintains that list over there, so good site to go check out.
All right, for AVRant, I'm Tom Andry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.